the earliest forms of mathematics, science, astronomy, writing, history, the calendar, organized religion, royalty, high arts, law, economics, statecraft, military, the city, or basically civilization was born. To understand the whole Sumerian civilized system properly, it is better to see it through number, specifically the number system of the sexagesimal, which they invented and which is based on the sos, or the number 60, and which we still use today to measure space and time. The Sumerians measured the earth within a 360-degree circle, and in the middle of the circle they placed a 5-pointed ziggurat with its 4 angles to the quarters and its summit pointing to the sky, down which the gods could descend to reconnect with the earth and its people via a ritualized sacrifice. In sync with this measurement of land was their measurement of time through the movements of the heavenly spheres within a 360-degree circle. Their year consisted of 360 days with an added 5-day festival week in which the old year died and the new was born and divinity was restored to earth, which they acted out through a symbolic sacrifice of the king at the ziggurat. In relation to this year, they calculated through the sexagesimal system a larger time span, which was the great year, or eon, that would culminate in a cosmic deluge and then restoration of the world. So each small hieratic city-state in Sumer was a projection on earth of a mathematically perceived pattern in the sky. The priestly city being the mesocosm that unified the microcosm of the individual and the macrocosm of the universe. And this whole harmonious system was ultimately embodied in the sacred ziggurat, which was situated in the center of the city. The ziggurat pyramid apparently symbolizing what symbologists today call an axis mundi, or the pivot of the universe. Over time, the basic model of Sumerian civilization would be transferred across the world to places like Egypt, Crete, Greece, Italy, Northern Europe, Iran, India, China, Japan, and Central and South America. And with this diffusion from the cradle of civilization also went the motifs of the ziggurat and its accompanying mythology. Only each specific people and culture reinterpreted them to suit their own environments. So for example, you had in Egypt the pyramids of the pharaohs, in Greece the Acropolis, in Northern Europe the Barrow tomb mounds, in India the stupa, in China the emperor burial pyramids, and in Central America the step pyramids. Skip to the beginning of the Renaissance period in Europe, circa 1300 AD, and the Europeans have just come out of a long period of Christian civilization domination called the Dark Ages, and have rediscovered the humanistic orientated civilizations of the classical Greeks and Romans, with new extensions from the Islamic, Indian and Chinese civilizations. Now all the archaic views going all the way back to Sumer, like a geocentric center to the universe and a world ruled by an almighty God, began to be shattered as new scientific minds began to question the foundations of reality. New horizons began to appear in Europe and then this new Western civilization began to sail across the globe, coming into direct contact with the other centers of civilization that still existed, had waned, or had disappeared. European imperial colonies were then established, and countries like the United States of America were born. Then during the Industrial Revolution, the world and mankind, which had now become more globally linked, began to be reduced to an economic machine, as religion began to be replaced by atheism, and the philosophies of people like Darwin, Marx, and Nietzsche began to take center stage. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world was now in a very unstable state, as all the boundaries that once defined and secured people had mostly disappeared. So out of this chaos, the world suddenly plunged into the giant abyss that was the First World War, as the Western powers fought for domination and stability. But not long after this first war ended, the world collapsed back into a dark void. Only the Second War surpassed the first in its global reach and industrial slaughter. World War II ended with the dropping of the first nuclear bombs on Japan, leading to the birth of the nuclear age, United Nations, and the stalemate that was the Cold War between the two new lone superpowers of Communist Russia and the democratic United States of America. Then near the end of the 20th century, the Soviet Union imploded and America became the remaining superpower of a now properly single, globalized civilization. The planet had entered into a stage of unprecedented stability and uniformity, and the future looked bright. But as the postmodernist philosopher Jean Baudrillard prophetically pointed out around that time, the symbol of this new world order of civilized relativity, the center of this new centerless world, was the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in Manhattan, New York. Now that I've finished tracing the historical roots of the modern skyscraper, city, and Western civilization to Sumer circa 3400 BC, maybe you will now get a better understanding of my connection of the Bible story of the Tower of Babel with the destruction of the World Trade Center Twin Towers on 9/11/2001.